And it looks like we are live. Guys, give me just a minute, please, because I have to pull in our wonderful Facebook audience, get everybody in here for the Mile High Huddle community back in the fold for another wonderful Friday evening here. Mile High hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I am your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me as per usual is my good friend and colleague. He is Mile High Huddle's senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. And guys, it feels good to be back on the show and joining you here on a great Friday evening to talk some Denver Broncos football. Took a little hiatus there, but I'm excited to be back. Erick, it's been a few weeks since you and I have got to sit down face to face and have a good football discussion. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good. I had a couple, wonderful holidays there. Spent a lot of time with the family, and got to do a bunch of shows with a bunch of different people over the past few weeks, which has been, always a treat and a joy being able to jump on and hear other people's takes and everything. But I'm glad you're back, man. I'm glad you had a good time away. Did you have a good holiday as well?
Yeah, I did actually. It was hectic for sure. I had a birthday in there. My wife had a birthday in there. We had actually my father-in-law had a birthday in there as well. Did Christmas at the house, just a quiet little thing, threw some presents around. Santa spoiled the kids like you could not believe. We did a couple different prime ribs. Last weekend, we went down to see my folks and have Christmas with those guys as well, celebrate and bring in a brand new year. New year, new me. We're all about that in my family, right? Not really. That's a horrible saying. Never do that. But it was a lot of fun, man. And again, I'm excited to be back on the show and talk some Denver Broncos football with you, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a joy. There's a lot that's happened over, while you're away. And first off, I mean, obviously there's the news of Russell Wilson being benched. I've given my takes on it. Everybody's given their takes on it. What were your thoughts on it, even though we're so far removed from it?
Yeah, and sorry to rehash an old topic here. I wanted to get some thoughts out on this. I think that quite honestly, this was the right move at the right time. You pretty much knew what the writing was on the wall a few weeks ago. Whether it was the screaming match that they got into on the sideline against the Lions, the whole wristband conversation, even going back several weeks ago, you could see that this marriage between Sean Payton and Russell Wilson was just not going to work. And it was almost known coming into this thing that it was never going to be a thing more than just this year. Let's see how it plays out, and then we're potentially going to move on. How it went about, though, is something I have an issue with. The dirty laundry getting aired for everybody is something that I don't necessarily appreciate, especially from this class act organization that it has been since 1984. That really kind of puckered my butt cheeks, if you will, for a little bit here. But I mean, I get it. I get it. Russell Wilson is so limited for being a guy nicknamed Mr. Unlimited. He is so limited in what he is able to do within an offense that is predicated on winning over the middle of the field, specifically from 11 to 19 yards. I mean, go back and watch the New Orleans Saints for a little bit with Drew Brees. What did they do well? They owned the middle of the field. They owned the slant route with Michael Thomas. They owned the middle of the field with the seam with Jimmy Graham for years. And not that Russell Wilson can't do that. It was just something that he wasn't necessarily the greatest at. And the marriage was never going to work. So that's my brief overview thoughts of this. That said, I would like to ask you a quick question. And I know that we kind of talked about this a little bit. What did you think of the Broncos-Chargers game? How did it look in your opinion?
I mean, it was pretty much the same old we saw on offense. There were a few things that we saw a little bit more. Play calling was a little bit more opened up, more attacking the middle of the field a little bit, but the overall results were pretty similar to what we've gotten the rest of the season.
Pretty much. That's what I thought too.
Goes to show that even though there's a lot that you can say about Russell Wilson, a lot you can say about Jared Stidham, the issues on offense go beyond them. And yes. I mean, it's pretty clear. So that's about it, really.
Yeah, it watching that game back, I saw some things that I liked, but I didn't really like a whole lot about it. It looked like the same process, same results, and they've got to get better. Specifically, the offensive line talent has to get better. They got to get better playmakers over the middle of the field. They've got to figure out a way to incorporate these guys that are running open. And it's not necessarily anything that you can say against Russell Wilson. It's not the guy, Jarrett Stidham. I don't think that he's going to be the guy moving forward. Peter King, I guess, predicted him being the starter next season moving forward, as the Broncos are very clearly going to be moving on from Russell Wilson at this point, whether it's a June 1st designation cut, whether they just eat the $85 million in dead cap over this next season in 2024 and completely gut the roster in doing so. Russell Wilson's not going to be a Denver Bronco next season. And that, to me, is just the plain and simple fact of the matter. After everything that's gone on over the past few weeks, it's been ugly, quite honestly. Let's get to the chat here really fast. We got David Cromwell jumping off of the top rope with a $20 super chat. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it that the Broncos will add to their quantity of picks before the draft? Sean Payton does have a history of doing so in New Orleans, and such pre-draft moves enable you to make big trades up the board. And Eric, this has been an ongoing topic of conversations that we've had for multiple months, even going back to pre-draft in 2022. The players on this roster: Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, Garrett Bowles, Justin Simmons. There's trade bait available that are coming onto this coming off this roster this season. How likely is it the Broncos are going to be looking at a completely different roster, and for like not just the most part, but completely in general moving forward in 2024?
Well, I mean, there'll probably be a lot of roster turnover. I mean, every year it's about, I think it's like the lease is typically about 25 to 30% for roster turnover for any team. Even teams that win the Super Bowl, you're still looking typically about 25 to 30%. I think the Broncos will add some picks. They'll move a couple players and add it. Whether they use that to move up the board, I don't know. I think that they want to infuse some youth into this roster and some cheaper youth to help them deal with the cap issues they're going to be dealing with. But yeah, I think it's likely they'll end up adding some draft picks via trades.
Yeah, I do as well. I think that the prime one to move on from, especially considering you're going to take such a huge cap hit, is Jerry Jeudy, quite honestly. There's not a lot that you can do with it coming into the fifth-year option. I believe that contract is fully guaranteed. Whether he's whoever has him on the roster has to pay that, $13 million, I think is what it is. So Jerry Jeudy is like one of the most likely candidates to be seen as a trade. Do you have any other guys you're looking at moving forward? I mean, obviously you've got Garrett Bowles. They can restructure him, Justin Simmons as well. Courtland Sutton seems to be another name. Maybe you want to get freaky and throw out a Pat Surtain. Any other players that could be on the move here?
Well, I think that like a player like Justin Simmons, Courtland Sutton, Patrick Surtain, I think all of them will be floated around on the trade market. I don't think any of them will be traded unless the offer is really big for Denver. Mm-hmm. And I think that they'll all be looking at extensions here soon, Bowles and Simmons especially. So you can wait another year on Patrick Surtain, but it's going to increase that cost. Other players, I doubt they'd be able to get anything for him, but maybe DJ Jones. Maybe you look at moving off from Damari Mathis and get like a round 7 pick for him or something. I'm not entirely sure they'll do that and instead use that as competition with Riley Moss, but they obviously have some options to it, but not sure what not sure exactly which players will be on their way out.
Yeah, it's hard to predict, quite honestly. I mean, it's sorry, I got a crazy comment in the chat. I don't want to bring any attention to that. It's so hard to predict what's going to happen. Obviously, like you said, Eric, 25-30% of the roster is going to be moving on from. And if you do move on from players like a Courtland Sutton, like a Justin Simmons, like a Garrett Bowles, you're not only taking away quality talent on this roster, but you're also taking away leadership in the locker room. I mean, those 3 guys have been around for the longest, for the most part, on this team. I believe Justin Simmons is the longest tenured Denver Bronco on the roster right now, followed by Garrett Bowles, and I believe Courtland Sutton is right there behind him as well. So if you want to move on from guys like that, you also have to not only replace the value that they bring onto the field, but also what they bring off the field in the locker room. Those guys are highly respected for this team. So it's really hard to make that decision and give them away for maybe even pennies on the dollar. It might seem to most teams in the NFL like the Broncos are going to be a fire sale here, especially considered the Russell Wilson situation right now.
Yeah, before we continue on, we have a quick word from our presenting sponsor, Little Caesars. So make Little Caesars the official pizza sponsor of the NFL, part of your game day. Pizza is one of those iconic foods that you have on, on football Sundays, Super Bowl Sundays, whenever. You can order online during our Pizza pregame. 1 hour before and 3 hours after NFL kickoffs, plus all day on Sunday, and get ready for some football and fun. You can choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. Either way, you win.
Yeah, gotta love pizza. Gotta love cheap and easy. They're great. They taste amazing. I love their pepperoni hot and readies. They're so awesome. The pretzel crust, they're great. The deep dish pizza that they do, those are awesome as well. All of my family loves to eat Little Caesars. And guys, speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery in our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends, enjoy a few slices during the game, and thank you very much to Little Caesars for sponsoring the show tonight. We appreciate you. Michael Ronquillo jumping in here. Good evening, Lance and Eric on Dove Valley Deep Divers. Go Broncos. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. Thank you for your continued support. We definitely appreciate that. Guys, get your questions in. We're going to run through as many questions as we possibly can tonight and have just a great conversation. Whatever you guys want to talk about, throw them in there. Stars, Super Chat's the easiest way for us to make sure that we see them. But let's give a quick shout out to everybody else in the chat. Michael throwing in some more love, giving us some pizza slices here on the outside. We want to say hello to Robert Ruprecht. We've got David Yunkin in the house, Mike S. as well. Dylan Von Arks, DVA behind the scenes running the ones. Well, actually, we got Scott behind the scenes running the ones and twos. DVA doing a great job moderating the chat. Douglas Wall in the house, Ernie Mays, Daniel Barry, got a couple of really good stuff coming on in here. Quick question though, Eric. Not sure if this has been talked about just a little bit. C Chang jumping in here wants to know. Just wonder, because if we're 9-7, if everybody else loses, the Broncos win. Would that be able to get the Broncos into the playoffs?
No, they're mathematically eliminated. There's no way into the playoffs at this point. They won, but it got to the point where they needed the Steelers to lose to Seattle. Didn't happen. That would have kept their wild card hopes alive a little bit, and they needed the Chiefs to lose to keep their division hopes alive, and that didn't happen. So they're eliminated from the playoffs. It's all about the draft at this point and seeing if they can end the Raiders streak of beating the Broncos and get their first win in Las Vegas and get their first winning record since 2016. That's what it's all about now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually brings us to an interesting philosophical question, because as you guys know, here on Dove Valley Deep Divers, we do like some of the most amazing draft content, not to toot our own horn here, but this is what we do. I mean, I have Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst here sitting to my left-hand side right now. And it's awesome to be able to talk all this stuff with you. We always go through all the scenarios. We run through thousands of different players. Hundreds of different articles are dropped every single year regarding our draft content. And I know you, if you're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, get as high of a draft pick as you possibly can. However, this is an interesting situation because the Broncos are going up this week against the Las Vegas Raiders, who they've lost to 7 times in a row. And they are sitting at 8-8 right now. They could very well have their first winning record for the first time since 2016, man. If you're trying to rebuild a culture, getting that winning record is definitely a great way to start that. Beating your division rivals, all 3 of them at least once in a season, that's a great way to start that. But dude, this team needs players. They need talent. They need young talent and cheap talent. What would you prefer, dude? Win or lose?
So this is a question that there's multiple aspects to it. The Broncos, their range is 11 to 16. But if they lose, they can only pick 11 to 13. If they win, they're picking 14 to 16. Their most likely landing spots are 12 with the loss or 15 with the win. So the question is picking 12 and losing to the Raiders better than winning and picking 15? To me, it's not. I would rather beat the Raiders and pick a few spots later than picking 12. One reason for that is the financial aspect of it. Is the Broncos at 15? I mean, it's a little bit less money you have to commit to a rookie than picking 12. Especially with how they're going to be in a pretty tough spot financially for the next couple of years as they deal with the dead cap hits of Russell Wilson. But the biggest thing to me is, like, if this was a year where I'm looking at the draft and there's like 12 or 13 players that are like not necessarily can't miss, but are like blue chip prospects, then yeah, I'd rather lose and go get one of those guys. To me, you have maybe 7 to 9, 8-ish players that are like that this year, and that's me being generous with it. And then you have all the other group of guys, probably about 15 to 20 guys at the moment for me, that are just so clumped together that picking one at 9th versus picking one at 20, to me, it's not a big difference of how they're graded. So I'm fine with taking the win, getting a similar rated prospect at 15 as I would at 12, but ending the streak that the Raiders have over the Broncos and getting that winning record, which sets off gets the Broncos on the right tune with Sean Payton, who wants to have a winning team.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all know the comments from coming in earlier this season. You made a couple points I want to get to, but first things first. Sean Payton to Jarrett Bell, USA Today, very first thing that he said this offseason going into training camp, if this team is not a playoff team, I'm going to be pissed off. Well, we're not a playoff team, but we can still end with a winning record. And that was the big thing. You won 5 games last year. This is already a success to me, given what we've gone through over this season. You start off 1-5. You're sitting now at 8-8. You rattle off 5 consecutive wins. You're playing a lot better football. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but you're figuring out ways to win games. You're being coached properly. Winning this last game to me means everything, especially because it's against the Raiders. The Broncos field an entire team worth of 6th grade boys, and I would not pick them to lose against the Raiders because I hate the Raiders that much. But still, the draft capital, I agree with you, Eric. Right now, I haven't done a whole lot on the draft. I'm going to get going here soon. Where I see the Broncos currently picking, though, you can get an offensive tackle. Maybe you can get Jerzon Newton from Illinois to help round out the interior of that defensive line. I know you're not a huge fan of him after speaking with you and privately about him, but there's some edge defenders around. You can get Chop Robinson, maybe Jared Verse as well, maybe Michael Penix Jr., Jaden Daniels, somebody around in that area. You can, if you land in that 11 to 16 area, you're going to have a high quality opportunity to get a solid player that's going to come in and be a starter for you immediately moving forward. Before we move on, I want to grab this comment from Papa Bear. David McElrath jumping in here on YouTube today saying, good evening, Broncos country, Lance, Eric, Dylan, and Deacon Scott. Hashtag 9-8. So he's on the win train. He was predicting 11-5 there for a while. While we were on that winning streak. He says hashtag Buckham 3 times, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Denver Broncos for life. And David, I'm glad to see you're doing a lot better, not to bring anything to the personal world, but just glad to see that you're doing a lot better out there and getting healthy. It's good to see you in the chat. I'm glad to be here with you, and I'm glad you joined us this evening.
Yeah, thank you, David. Hope everything's going well. But yeah, I mean, going back to that conversation real quick about beating the Raiders, it's going to be tough because first of all, they always play the Broncos tough. Mm-hmm. And if you've listened to what some of the players have said this week about their interim head coach, Devontae Adams especially, mm-hmm. they like the guy and they're playing hard for him. So, I mean, I would much rather the Broncos win and pick 15. But to me, if they lose, it's not a super terrible thing. Losing to the Raiders always sucks. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But it's just enough of like, okay, well, we get to pick a little bit higher. It's not enough to make me, not necessarily root for a loss, but be perfectly fine with a loss. So that's one thing too, is like, at least it's not a situation like a few years ago where beating the Raiders took us from picking 10 to 15th, which took some of those high caliber players out of the option for the Broncos. Mm-hmm. And we end up taking Jerry Jeudy instead. So at least there is a little bit of a difference there compared to a couple years ago too.
Right. So who are you looking at right now in that, let's just call it 11 to 16, 11 to 20 range that would be like high up on your priority list for the Broncos? And then we'll jump back to the chat here in just a second.
I mean, if any of the quarterbacks fall, I would even consider Michael Penix there, but I wouldn't, depending on the medicals. Always got to make that clear. Depends on the medicals for Michael Penix. ACL, 2 ACLs, both shoulders having surgery. Concern, I doubt Drake May or Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams falls that far. If for some reason they do, you consider it. Brock Bowers is a guy that I would look really hard at if he happened to be there, because you need a tight end in Sean Payton's offense. Mm-hmm. Bunch of tackles here. JC Latham out of Alabama, he's a guy that I would look at. I don't think Joe Alt or Olu Fasciano will fall that far. If for some reason they do, that would be fine. Marius Mims out of Georgia, he's another guy. He has some, lack of experience due to some injuries an injury this last year that kept him from playing. But dude is so big, athletic, and just such a freak. I'd consider him, and he could use a year to sit. So even if you do keep Garrett Bowles and Mike McGlinchey as your starters, you can still have Mims sit there to grow and develop. Edge rushers, I mean, you named a couple. There's not a defensive lineman I like that early. Wide receivers on the table. Basically, you look at you throw a dart, and any position on the in football can be an option for the Broncos early that in this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And another guy that just declared, we'll piggyback this conversation together really fast. Another guy that just declared the other day, Nick Kendall's guy, Cooper DeJean from Iowa, just declared cornerback. Well, really hybrid defensive back. He played cornerback, quality punt returner as well. But this dude is one of the most athletic players I've ever seen in my life. This dude is a freak. He's got length. He's a great tackler. He can play at safety. He can play in the slot. He can play on the boundary. I think it's Daniel Jeremiah or Nate Tice. One of the two of those guys are saying that like they're comparing him to Patrick Peterson in terms of his versatility and athleticism. The length and the size comparisons are just off the charts with him. And speaking of Nick Kendall, I do want to grab this comment here from David Youngkin. Saying, I hope Nick and his new family is doing well. And yes, I want to bring this to light. Hopefully he doesn't hate me for it, but congratulations to Nick and his wife, Natalie, on the birth of their firstborn child the other day. Healthy baby boy. Congratulations to those guys. You guys are always here in our thoughts. Hopefully everything's going good with those guys. And congratulations again from everybody here at the Sanderson household and the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast.
Yeah. Same from him. I mean, we got to sit there and send him our congratulations and everything like that privately. So it's all everything's all good with them, which I'm thankful for. I mean, especially after the birth of my little one, I'm that was the biggest thing. I was just glad that everything went well.
Yeah, me too.
Mom and baby are fine, and so congrats to him. Send him our wishes, but Iowa still sucks.
Yeah, Iowa always sucks. We can never ever forget that Iowa always sucks. The worst offense in college football this season. Let's see here. So Eric, let's go. We got a question here. Robert Ruprecht jumping in here, saying, "Who are you considering, David?" I think he's talking to David Youngkin. Maybe Michael Penix, maybe Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix. Let's go JJ McCarthy in there as well, because like you said, I'm firmly with you here. Caleb Williams is a guy that's probably going to go number one overall. If he doesn't go to the Bears, someone's going to trade up and go get him. Drake May probably going to go number 2 to the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels probably going to be a top 10 pick. If the Broncos around 12, that might be a trade up option. But if you can't get inside the top 10 to get one of those 3 guys, which one would you prefer? Let's break down a little bit of this NFL draft conversation a little bit. And if you're going quarterback in the first round, which one stands out to you?
I mean, so this is a question that I've kind of touched on before, being on Tuesday and Wednesday night as well.
Okay, so Michael Penix, my apologies.
No, it's all good. It's worth repeating. Different nights, different audience, and everything. But when I look at the guys after the top 3, because I think all 3 of them are gone by pick 8 at the latest, Michael Penix is the one. Scott in here Scott behind the scenes saying 5. Very possible. Wouldn't surprise me one bit either. But Michael Penix is the guy that stands out the most. I think he's probably one of the best fit of the remaining 3 for what Sean Payton likes to do on offense. There's been some concerns brought up by Nate Tice and others about his working the middle of the field. Everything that I can find about that, and when I watch him, it seems to be fine. Makes me curious what they're calling middle of the field. I know some people deem it anything between the hash marks. Other places deem it anywhere between the numbers. Some places have it kind of in between the hash marks and the numbers. So very curious about that. But he reads the field quickly. I mean, he dealt with a lot of talent. He has a pretty deep ball. One of the best this year. He just does so much that just translates very extremely well to what Sean Payton does offensively. There are concerns again. I don't see them, but others have them with the middle of the field stuff. How he does with pressure, that was a big thing. I talked about that a lot on Tuesday and Wednesday, how he deals with pressure. He answered some of those questions in this last game against Texas. We'll probably get a chance to see it a lot more and see if he can continue to show growth with that against Michigan. But there's a lot to like with him. I would probably go, and if I had to put him in order, I'd probably go Penix. And then the next 2 are tough. McCarthy has so much upside, but there's so much with being a quarterback you have to work on. I would probably put him behind Nix. So Penix, Nix, and then McCarthy probably is the way I would go.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Bo Nix by any stretch of the imagination, man. It's hard to succeed at the NFL level when 70% of your throws go less than 10 yards in the air. It's not fun watching him play. Like, he'll make the big time throws, and he's a great athlete. Everyone's like, oh, he's Justin Herbert or he's Drew Brees. I keep hearing that thing. I'm like, what are you watching? Like, come on, guys. Let's be honest here. To me, I'm with you, dude. Michael Penix Jr., I watched a lot of Washington football, man. This kid is special. Like you said, the prettiest deep ball in college football this year. And if it's not, it's only number 2 behind Jaden Daniels, who had a great deep ball this year as well. And Penix, he manipulates the pocket so well. He doesn't take a lot of sacks. He gets the ball out of his hands quickly. Snap release from multiple different platforms. He can snap it from different angles. Like, this dude is just special, man. I think that we were talking a little bit behind the scenes before coming into the show. I think that of any player in this draft class right now, Penix might have the highest floor out of all of them. He's just going to be a solid player. Now, I understand, you've got the injury concerns, and I'm right there with you. The ACLs was something that I was so concerned about. The shoulder injuries he's had, the fact he's going to be 24 a week after the draft is over, that's a big issue for me too. But this kid has improved every single year that he's been on the field. Going back to his time at Indiana, this kid has been an absolutely fantastic thrower of the football. And when you talk about the most polished passer in the class right now, it's probably Michael Penix Jr. And like you said, he fits this team to a T, to an absolute T to this scheme, man. The concerns there probably drop him down on my board to about the middle of the second round. But if the Broncos took him about 14, 15, 16, I'm on board 100%, man. That's the dude. You're going to hear that a lot from me coming through this draft process. I love this young man. David Youngkin coming in here saying, Lance and Eric, do you think that it will take a few years to fill all the holes that we have on this roster? What do you think, Eric? There's quite a few. We could start off edge. We could start off quarterback, wide receiver, corner. How long do you think it's going to take to fill all these holes?
It's impossible to fill all your holes unless you get really, really lucky with the draft.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because every year you're not always going to be able to replace somebody who leaves in free agency. And if you manage to fill the good starting lineup on both offense and defense, well, then your depth may not be great. It's just, it's impossible to not have no holes on a football roster with, all the different positions and only being able to have 53 players on your roster. 50 once you take out the 3 specialists that you have to have. It's impossible. I don't think there ever is, but to a point where you can be comfortable, I think that it'll take a year or two for the Broncos, as in like 2025 or 2026. Counting 2024 as one of those years, before they're in a position to be comfortable with the starting lineup they have, to where there's no holes, so to speak, in their starting lineup.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And it's so hard, especially considering where the Broncos are at right now. And Eric, we haven't gotten a chance to talk about Jerry Jeudy, Marvin Mims, Courtland Sutton, this wide receiver room. Obviously, missing Tim Patrick this season really hurt. But I think that it's time for us to all kind of acknowledge that this receiver room is missing overall top talent, like just to begin with. There's not a real Batman on this receiver room at all. I mean, Courtland Sutton is a great player. Don't get me wrong. Jerry Jeudy is a great route runner, has all the potential in the world, just can't seem to get it off the ground and keep going. We don't know what Marvin Mims is. We don't know what Tim Patrick is, coming off of a torn ACL and a torn Achilles in back-to-back seasons. Wide receiver is definitely a huge need for this team moving forward. Tight end is a huge need for this team moving forward. You've got edge defender that's a huge need for this team moving forward. Interior defensive line, off-ball linebacker, guys that can go play in coverage. I mean, they brought in Drew Sanders, and they're hoping that he can kind of turn into that hybrid edge / off-ball linebacker guy. But Josie Jewell is on the last year of his deal this year. He's probably going to walk away in free agency. Alex Singleton is so inconsistent at times. You need cornerback help because Fabian Moreau is on the last year of his deal. He's on a 1-year deal this year anyways. And Damari Mathis has struggled to grow in year 2. We don't know what Riley Moss is. Pat Surtain is awesome, but you're going to need another cornerback. Who's going to fill in the second safety role beside Justin Simmons? Kareem Jackson is already gone. PJ Locke's on the last year of his deal this year. Are you going to bring him back and rely on him as a full-time starter next year? That's another conversation for another time, by the way. It's going to take some time, guys. This roster, we can poke holes in this roster, and Eric and I have done this multiple times over the course of this season. it's going to take some time to fill and plug all these holes. And you're going to be stuck there like the little Dutch boy with your finger in the dam, and another hole is going to start over here. It's going to happen. It's going to take some time. Absolutely, it's going to take some time. I agree with you 100%, Eric.
Yeah, and I saw some talk about Michael Penix running the ball and everything. It's not something he's ever done a whole lot. He has 114 rushing attempts in his college career for under 400 yards. He ran 58 times, I think it was, in Indiana, and 56 times during his 2 years at Washington. It's not something he does a lot. And then as for the injuries, the concern is with the injuries isn't necessarily that he'll get hurt again. Every player has that concern about if they're going to get hurt again. The question is going to be, is there structural damage or structural concerns from the ACL injuries or the shoulder surgeries? That's where the concern is with Michael Penix, where they do the testing, they get a chance to look at x-rays and all this other stuff the team doctors do, and they get to check that out. If you want to avoid injuries, there's no way to predict injuries in the NFL. Players have gone through their whole college career without getting hurt and then can't stay healthy in the NFL. Players in college have struggled to stay on the field and then don't have that issue in the NFL. It happens both ways. So you can't focus on, they're going to get hurt again because they have all this injuries history. Not always how it works. Sometimes it does. Sometimes players struggle to stay healthy in the NFL or in college, and they struggle to stay healthy in the NFL. All of it happens. But it's all about with Michael Penix. It's the structural damage or that might be there in the knees or the shoulders that will concern teams until they get a chance to look at it. And I said this the other night, if he goes early in the draft, that at least that team didn't have concerns about it. If he falls a little bit in the draft, well, teams have concerns about it. Just to keep in mind. But guys, we're going to move on to talking about, our topic for the night, matchups against the Raiders in the season finale. If you guys have any questions, comments, make sure you get them in. Super chats or stars are the easiest way to make sure we get to them, of course. But with the Raiders, I mean, we've already talked about how we want to see them win because we hate the Raiders. No Josh Jacobs. He's been rolled out.
Yep.
We should be getting Cortland Sutton back and Baron Browning back. Both of them aren't rolled out and they're not on. They don't have a designation. I think things are lining up, especially with Josh Jacobs, who's been such a killer against the Broncos. For the Broncos to walk out with the win in this one.
Yeah, like I said earlier, you could field an entire team of 6-year-olds sixth graders is what I said specifically, but you could field an entire team of 6th graders against the Raiders right now, and I would not pick against the Broncos to win this game. Chris Manhertz, Mike McGlinchey officially listed as out today, so you're going to see Cam Fleming man the right tackle position, who I thought actually played relatively decently last week against the Chargers, and that's a very tough matchup, getting Khalil Mack and what's the other kid? Dang it. The USC kid. I cannot remember his name.
Tuli.
Off the top of my yes, Tuli Pelotu. Excuse me. Sorry for that, guys. But so Fleming's going to play at right tackle. Manhertz, obviously, that kind of hurts with the running game. And quite honestly, going back and watching this Raiders team, I went and watched the Indianapolis Colts game earlier today. And the Colts were successful on the ground, but over the last 3 weeks, this Raiders team is only allowing 3.7 yards per rush attempt, seventh lowest in the NFL right now. This run defense for this Raiders team has really stepped up underneath Antonio Pierce, man. And that's really my biggest key for the Broncos to come away with a win is how this Broncos offensive line matches up against Max Crosby and the rest of that Raiders defensive line, because pass protection we know has been kind of shaky for the most part, but this team relies on the running game so well, and this Raiders team is doing very well against the run over the last 3 weeks.
Well, I mean, I talked about this multiple times over the past few weeks, past few months, really, is one of the best ways you run the ball against Max Crosby is running right at him. Yep. He has a bad habit of being extremely aggressive with getting upfield and leaving his gap open. Try to exploit that. You got to get Cameron Fleming to be successful, because Cameron Fleming, even last year, was very hit or miss against the run. But that's one way to get it going and find ways to extend it. This is also a team where attacking the middle of the field can be successful for them. So I would expect to try and get, Colton Sutton, Marvin Mims, Jerry Jeudy, and Jarrett Stidham all on the same page when working the middle of the field, something that they weren't able to do all season long. So it's going to be a slight change for those wide receivers a little bit.
Yeah, Antonio Aragon jumping in here. This is a new name for me. So if you've been here in the last 3 weeks and I haven't seen your name, I do appreciate you for joining us. If not, welcome into the show. We definitely appreciate you for joining us. $10 super chat saying, keep up the great work, guys. Hashtag Broncos country. You keep up the great work and your great support. We definitely appreciate you for joining us, my friend. Thank you, Antonio. Eric, you said something that I want to touch on just a little bit here, talking about working over the middle of the field. And I'm not going to be mean here, but I do want to go on a little bit of a topic. Talking about Jarrett Stidham and working over the middle of the field. This last week against the Chargers, I thought he did a couple of things well that within the offense, within this basic structure of the offense, that Russell Wilson just, not saying he can't do it, just didn't do it at a high level this year. And I'm going to point out 2 specific plays. The first one is going to be Russell Wilson against the New England Patriots, where it's a 3-man rush. Russell Wilson spins out, runs into a sack, but he has Jerry Jeudy working the crossing route over the middle of the field. He also has, I believe it was Lucas Kroll, it might have been Troutman working on the crossing route, working underneath each other. Fast forward a week. Jarrett Stidham hit this exact same play, stepping up into the pocket and driving a throw into the second window in between the numbers and the hash marks. It turned into a 45-yard gain. That's something you can exploit against this Raiders team. Absolutely, you can. The Colts did it 3 times, I believe. They hit Josh Dobbs on one big long crossing route. Damn near went for a touchdown. They worked it with Mo Alley Cox at the tight end position coming out of the slot as well. Attacking the middle of the field, man. This plays into the strengths of Jarrett Stidham and to the specific play calling strength of the Sean Payton offense. You want to attack that. Is this something we're going to see specifically this week? I know you brought it up, Jerry Jeudy, Marvin Mims, Cortland Sutton. This is, to me, the biggest advantage that the Broncos have against this Raiders defense, is working the middle of the field against those linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, if only they had, one of the easiest ways to do that is with a tight end working the seam a little bit, and they just don't have a tight end that can do that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It is really unfortunate. I mean, if only they had someone like Brock Bowers, or maybe if they had somebody whose legs weren't made out of mashed potatoes. But Adam Troutman, that's not his game. Never really has been. He's one of those guys that he can work, those from being an inline tight end, working those outs and ends a little bit, but you need somebody to attack the seam a little bit. And so it makes it a little bit tougher to attack, specifically attack the linebackers in coverage, especially with the way the Raiders play defense. They make it a little bit more difficult as well. There's ways, and I'm sure Sean Payton will be watching the film, and now that he has a quarterback that's almost isn't completely unwilling to attack the middle of the field, probably see some middle of the field calls, deep crossers, things like that, to get keep the ball moving.
Yeah. Chase jumping in here with a quick question. Eric and Lance, are you guys bullish on Lucas Kroll in general? I'll start off just with some brief thoughts here. I think that there's a lot to work with here. Big body, kind of athletic, not a burner by any stretch of the imagination, but for a guy that size, he's got a good catch radius. Functional, I guess, as a blocker. Not the greatest guy out there at the point of attack, but he can get out there and get some work done. Developmental guy, for sure. I think that you want to work with him again over an offseason and keep him in your program. But, Eric, I don't think that this is a big-time player at the NFL position. What do you think?
I think he could develop into like a number 3 guy, kind of what he is now, but not being, not doing it because the tight end room is not great. There's tools and traits to work with him. Just got to see it on the field a little bit more consistently. His blocking leaves a lot to be desired. But I mean, you can find ways to make him work, and who knows, maybe this is the game where you can see him being used in that, because he is a guy who can attack the middle of the field and the seam a little bit more than the other tight ends the Broncos have.
Yeah, and it works too. I know that they tried to throw him a jump ball situation against the Houston Texans. That ball was eventually picked off, but they went
which
back
wasn't at all Lucas Kroll's fault.
No, it was not. It was poorly placed ball. It was late from Russell Wilson as well. But they went back to the well again. Was that the Patriots game? It was the Patriots game. They went back, not really the same play, but they threw another jump ball to Lucas Kroll against the Patriots, where he brought down his first NFL touchdown pass. So congratulations to him. Quickly here, Michael Ronquillo jumping in here. Alex Palczewski did some playing time at tackle. It's been a minute since I took a look. Is he available? Is he on?
He's still on injured reserve. He hasn't been activated off injured reserve yet. They could do that. They could do that tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I hadn't seen anything, and I knew that he was still on injured reserve with the forearm injury that he suffered in the preseason, but I wasn't sure if he was actually activated at any point over the course of the season. So thank you for that clarification. I am excited to see him. If they do activate him, let's get him out there and see what he can do, because there's your developmental right tackle, swing tackle player that showed a lot of promise in the preseason earlier this year. We've got a Facebook user jumping in here, Benjamin Flores. We know that name. Thanks for joining us, Ben. Hoping for a win because I hate the Raiders, but kind of worried about the way their defense has been playing and the fact that they're playing hard for their coach. I'm worried Jarrett Stidham may have a pick or two, and worse yet, a pick 6. But so long as we come away with a W to the end of the season, I'm happy. Go Broncos, and thank you, Ben, for joining us tonight. Let's perfect transition, perfect segue, as we call it in the business here. We talked about the Broncos offense a little bit going against the defense, but this Broncos defense against the Raiders offense, man. You talked a little bit about Josh Jacobs being out, but last week they got some traction on the ground with Zamir White, man. I think that this Raiders offensive line against this Broncos defensive line, who struggled against stopping the run, really struggled in pass, getting pressure up front as well. This could be a big game for this Raiders offense to be able to get some stuff going.
Yeah, let me clarify that. Is Josh Jacobs typically always kills the Broncos on the ground, and yes. I feel a little bit better about this Broncos defense going against Zamir White than I would Josh Jacobs. Mm-hmm. I still would think that they would have success on the ground game because they've made teams with bad running games look competent. Mm-hmm. Like, this run defense is just terrible. Like, these two teams are more evenly matched. I mean, both of them backup quarterbacks. Both of them have inconsistencies on defense. Both of them have inconsistencies on offense. Both of them are going to be missing a couple, key players due to injury that are keeping them out of this game specifically. Despite Mike McGlinchey's issues in pass protection, he did all right against Max Crosby in game 1. So maybe he would have been able to, carry over and have a good game here. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, there's a concern there with Zamir White. As I said, there's also concerns with some of the matchups they can make with the weapons that they have. Mm-hmm. Aiden O'Connell with what he does. I mean, hopefully Van Schossa is able to confuse him pre-snap enough, because when he can work with timing and rhythm, he actually isn't too bad of a quarterback. Still not a legit starter, but he can work that way.
Yeah, I think Aiden O'Connell is going to have a long and bright career as a backup quarterback in this league that's going to come in and win you some spot starts. Like, it's his rookie season, so let him learn, let him grow a little bit within the system, and maybe he's going to bounce around the league a little bit. But the dude comes out there and he seems poised for the most part. Like, you can definitely get after him. You can rattle him. You can get him off his spot, and when he gets off his spot, he drifts straight backwards. He throws off his back foot and doesn't work with timing. But like you said, dude, when he does work with timing, when he works the out route with Davante Adams, man, it's special. Like, he puts the ball in a great place for Davante to go in and go get his feet down. It's an easily catchable football, and he loves to throw it his way. We saw this in week 1 against the Raiders back in Mile High Stadium. And the guy that scares me the most in this passing attack, it's not necessarily Davante Adams. I think you're going to see a lot of Pat Surtain kind of shadowing him around. Not that you're going to move him around, but him and Pat Surtain and Davante Adams are going to be they're going to be locked up against each other a lot. My thing is, we saw Jacoby Myers working the middle of the field, and it was ugly. And Aiden O'Connell does a really good job of leading him into open areas and finding just those soft spots in zones. Jacoby Myers is a sneaky good wide receiver, and he's going to be a tough test for Jaquan McMillan, who, while he played great over that 5-game winning streak, even for the majority of the season, last couple weeks he's been a little bit soft in coverage, despite me still thinking that he might be a top 5 slot coverage cornerback in the NFL. Jacoby Myers, dude, what do you think of him?
Yeah, I mean, we saw what he could do week one. We just completely Denver's defense didn't account for him whatsoever, and he made them pay for it. I doubt they're going to make that same mistake here. I have a little bit more confidence in Fabian Moreau handling him than I
That's a
did
good point.
Mari Mathis.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing too is going over recently with Jacoby Myers, especially since Aiden O'Connell has taken over. They aren't exactly the best of matches with it. They can still work and be effective. But I think the Broncos will have an answer for him with Surtain playing more on Devontae Adams. And hopefully we get, true shutdown corner Patrick Surtain instead of the inconsistent guy we have had a little bit. And then Jaquan McMillan, obviously, he hasn't been as great recently as he was since he first started for like 8 weeks or whatever during that win streak and a little bit before. But he's still playing decently enough. Hopefully he can bounce back and end the season on a high note. But this is going to be last call, guys, for any questions here. Lance, as I pass it back off to you, what was your score prediction for this one?
1,000,000-0. The Broncos win. No, for real though, it was a 31-3. I think Denver's going to come out and make a statement. I think that despite this Raiders team playing as hard as they are for Antonio Pierce, this was me being a homer for sure. I kind of being a jerk here, but no, I don't think that the Raiders really have much of an answer for Denver right now. They're running the football well. They're going to try to figure out this passing attack and just kind of play it. I think the real score is going to be probably about a 17-10 game. It's going to be an ugly football game. We're going to see a bunch of guys butting their heads together. Denver's going to control this game for the most part because their defense is playing way better than the Raiders' offense is, plain and simple. This Broncos defense is opportunistic. They get a lot of pressures. They force a lot of turnovers, even despite these last few weeks where they haven't done a whole lot of that. They still are so opportunistic, and they're going to just make life a living hell for Aiden O'Connell in the pocket. And it's going to be like I said, ugly knockdown, drag it out, and just let's go to work type of game. The streak ends. Broncos get their winning season for the first time in what seems like 25 years, even though it's only been 7. But yeah, I know I went in about 7 different directions there. Yeah, 17-10 Denver Broncos actually win. That's my real prediction, 17-10.
Mine's not, if I remember right, mine's not far off from that. I got sick yesterday, still dealing with it a little bit, and got hit up early this morning for me by Big Boss Chad about getting my prediction in. I think I went 24-13 Broncos over the Raiders, I think. I think Stidham's able to do just enough, and the defense does well of keeping them from being out. And Josh Jacobs not playing is definitely a boost. But real quick, I got to shout out Bama X here saying tough week, Mike, tough week. Mike and Bama both obviously Alabama fans in the chat. Man, your guys' center is one of the bigger reasons why you guys lost that game.
Yeah.
Those snaps on that final sequencing of plays, like 3 of the final 4 plays, the snap was absolutely awful. Just put the timing way off and just put the Alabama offense behind from a chance to win. But yeah, sucks the Alabama loss for you guys, but I think the majority of the rest of the country's pretty happy to see Michigan win that one.
I have a comment in a direction I want to go in, but I'm not going to because I don't really want to bring that up. But College game day. I'm just going to throw that out there. College game day with Alabama. That was the best thing that came out of Alabama the entire weekend after the final score was done. If you guys don't know, just search Alabama college game day and you'll figure it out. Savage Boy Kev jumping in here with a question on Twitch. Eric, why are you out on JJ McCarthy? Did I re-step on something really fast? If I did, I'm sorry.
I've never been super high on McCarthy. Early this season, he was impressing a little bit. But no, there's just so much as a quarterback he has to work on and improve for the NFL. I'd be fine taking him and taking a flyer on him round 3, but I think he's going to go earlier than that. And I wouldn't take him top 75. And he's a guy that I think will go 20 to 50 or so. Just so much that needs to work on. His play against Alabama wasn't the best. Made a couple throws in, a couple key moments, but just still so much that he needs to work on to be an NFL quarterback.
Scott coming in here behind the scenes saying my 5-second comp on JJ McCarthy is Ken Dorsey. It's kind of meh. It's kind of there. I'm out on JJ McCarthy. He's so raw. The upside's there. It's intriguing to watch him play. He's got all of the talent in the world, but learning the nuances of playing the quarterback position, he's got a long ways to go on that. And like Eric said, for him, I'm probably going to have him right around the 75 to 100 range on my big board. He's going to be a guy that someone's going to fall in love with the tools and make a very dumb decision on. And I'm going to laugh at them when they do that. Not really, but anyways, guys, that's going to do it for us. Thank you all for joining us here on a great and wonderful Friday evening. It's so glad, I'm so excited and so glad to be back with you guys. I know it took a few weeks off. Thank you guys for bearing with me as I spent some time with my family and just kind of rebooted a little bit. Thank you, Eric, for holding down the fort in my stead. I appreciate that. Scott as well, Chad Jensen behind the scenes, and everybody else that kind of that kept the show going, kept the vibes going, and just made this a great show for everybody on a Friday evening. You guys can follow us on Twitter by finding me at LanceS_MHH, and for Eric at Erick Trickel. Also for Scott, who's behind the scenes running the ones and twos. You got him at Scout Kennedy. Also at Arcs_Von D, I believe is what Eric, what Dylan's is, DVA. Regardless, guys, while you guys are at it, make sure you guys are following at Mile High Huddle. That is the mother account where you guys can find breaking news and analysis regarding your Denver Broncos, film breakdowns, opinion articles, all of our draft content. You're going to be able to find that all there, as well as at milehighhuddle.com. Facebook supporters, make sure you guys go to facebook.com/MHH pod, because that is, Mile High Huddle pod. That's a great way to keep the conversation going. And guys, if you guys are not financially able to do so in terms of super chats or stars donations, hitting the merch tent, anything like that, we understand. Times are tough out there. It is what it is. You guys just being here and enjoying a great evening with us talking Broncos football is more than enough. But if you really want to help support the show, make sure you guys do the 3 things at the bottom of the screen here. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle across all platforms. Like every video you guys see. And if you love it, please share it to your Facebook account, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you guys get your content. Please subscribe, like, and share to that. It helps out the most, more than you guys can absolutely know, because without your guys' love and support, we could not do what we do on a nightly basis here on the Mile High Huddle Podcast Network. Michael Ronquillo jumping in here with another stars donation on Facebook, showing his great Mount Rushmore support here. A great show tonight. Lance and Eric on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Go Broncos, go Michael, go everybody else who joined us tonight, including David. We had Papa Bear McElrath in the house, Mike S., we missed Troy tonight. Unfortunately, no Troy tonight. But everybody who joined us, we definitely appreciate and love all of your guys' support. Before we got out of here, though, Eric, I just rambled for I don't even know how long. Holy cow, I haven't read that reading forever. Eric, any last words, my dude? How you doing?
Yeah, I mean, Savage Boy Kev says final DVD of the season. That is correct. Next week, I think we will probably do our annual season in review kind of podcast, and then draft stuff, baby. I'm excited for that. Been trying to get caught up. I mean, I'm very behind, as I am every year at this time. Get caught up in the holidays, which takes me off track. But excited to get into the draft. Working on getting a good friend of the show, Luke Poglaze, on for a couple of shows during the draft process.
We love that.
Going to try and convince him of that. But yeah, next week will probably be our season in review, and then draft content. Senior Bowl's coming up. Combine's not long after that. All these big events, the big key events of the draft season. Thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. And of course, go Broncos.
Yeah, absolutely. You all stay safe and take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, go Broncos. We'll see you guys same time, same place next week.